The theme I chose early on in my career is somewhat uncharacteristic for a novelist, and it took the form of a question. What is the effect of the ever-increasing penetration of market forces into everyday life? It's not exactly what you expect a novelist to address. It's a theme that's pretty much dominated my literary activity from my early fiction to my major work, the capital novels, of which so far I've only managed to write 2. I had big plans when I was younger. They're not quite going as quickly as I would have liked. The theme first crystallised for me in specific artistic terms when I was studying philosophy at Sydney University in the early 1980s. Fairly on in my studies, I took an interest in Marxism. A key intellectual debate that I came across centred on the relationship between the young humanist Marx and the later scientific Marx, the economist Marx. Debates in the Marxist humanist tradition revolved around questions of species being, about what it means to be human. Stated briefly, to be human is to have needs and drives, to have passions and desires, and to be self-determining and to be creative. As Marx explored species being and its relationship to the economic vehicle that increasingly dominated it, the capitalist mode of production, he developed the theory of alienation. Put simply, the theory of alienation is based on the notion of the subject-object inversion. In capitalism, the human subject is no longer self-determining in their creative acts. They no longer produce the world according to a species rationality. Rather, their acts are objectified or reified. They become subsumed by the higher rationality of capitalist production, or in our cases, I'd kind of go the bureaucracy of market forces. And one main goal of market forces, once again put simply, is to make the many create enormous wealth for a few. Never has this been truer than in our era, and we only have to look at the recent Greek example, where we'll see capital running roughshod over labour as Greece becomes a kind of upmarket slave economy for the rest of the world, anyway. But to come back to the main thread of this discussion, in the early 1980s, as a young writer about to make his way in the world, this question of alienation worried me terribly. For a long time, it was all I could see, all I could feel, this massive, inexorable shift at all levels towards the dominance of capitalist rationality. And moreover, it was something I would be expected to participate in if I was to prosper or flourish as a human being in any way. As a writer, I don't know if I've ever been particularly happy with this theme. It's big, it's heavy, it's oppressive. It doesn't leave much room for optimism. In my lifetime, we've seen the events in Greece and so on. So nothing seems to be improving. This theme also engenders some fairly intractable contradictions on a practical level as a writer. One of the most fundamental is how to make any meaningful statement on reification in a commodified, reified world. And this extends to the publishing industry, to the culture industries. This conflict or contradiction or irony isn't new, and there are very artistic responses to it, and there's a very good one, a historical one. You can see one response in this problem to Charlie Chaplin's 1930s film, Modern Times. It's one of the great artistic renderings of the alienation of labour, of the subject-object inversion. In a famous sequence, a group of factory workers on an assembly line can barely keep up with their repetitive task, and the sight gags of silent comedy are used to show how man is subjugated to machine.